You probably have a Disney memory. A specific one? Maybe it's the first time you watched The Lion King and genuinely cried at a cartoon. Maybe it's standing in line at Disney World as a kid, sweating in the Florida heat, and not caring even a little bit. Maybe it's just hearing part of your world and suddenly feeling 7 years old again. Disney didn't just stumble into that feeling. They manufactured it deliberately and systematically over decades. Today, I'll walk you through how they did it, because what Disney has built is one of the most sophisticated emotional dependency systems ever created in the history of entertainment. And most of us are inside it without realizing it. There's a phenomenon called the reminiscence bump. Psychologists have known about this for decades. It basically says that the memories we form between ages 5 and 25, especially between 5 and 15, are disproportionately vivid and emotionally powerful compared to memories formed at any other time in our lives. The brain is still developing during those years, emotions are heightened, and experiences hit differently. Disney has been targeting exactly that window since Walt himself was running the company. Walt Disney openly talked about building experiences for children, not because he was purely sentimental, but because he understood that a child who loves Disney becomes an adult who trusts Disney. In a 1963 interview, Walt said he didn't make films for children. He made them for the child in everyone. That framing sounds warm. It's also strategically brilliant. When you build an emotional relationship with a child, you're not just selling them a movie ticket. You're planting something that lasts 50 years. Here's the mechanism. Emotional memories formed in childhood become identity memories. They don't feel like consumption. They feel like who you are. When someone says, "I'm a Disney person," they're not describing a preference. They're describing part of their self-concept. And that's an almost unassailable market position. No other entertainment company has cracked this as consistently as Disney. Not Universal, not Warner Brothers, not Netflix. Disney figured out that childhood is the most valuable real estate in the human brain, and they've been buying it up for nearly a century. Now, let's get into the mechanics of how Disney converts childhood exposure into adult spending. The first tool is what I'd call the vault strategy. For decades, Disney deliberately limited access to its classic films, releasing them for short theatrical or VHS windows, then pulling them back. The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, they'd go back in the vault. This wasn't just about artificial scarcity, although it was absolutely that too. It was about ensuring that each new generation of children encountered these films as fresh events. And it worked brilliantly. Every 7 to 10 years, a new crop of kids had their first Lion King moment. And their parents, who had their own Lion King moment, now got to share it. Disney made nostalgia a multi-generational activity. Then streaming changed the calculus. Disney Plus launched in November 2019 and hit 10 million subscribers in its first 24 hours. By early 2024, it had crossed 150 million subscribers globally, according to Disney's own earnings reports. The vault strategy became irrelevant because the vault was always open, but now Disney had something even better: recurring subscription revenue from people who signed up, at least initially, to revisit their childhood. The second tool is the live-action remake machine. Between 2010 and 2024, Disney released over 20 live-action remakes or reimaginings of animated classics, including Cinderella, The Jungle Book, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, Mulan, Pinocchio, and The Little Mermaid. This isn't creative exhaustion, it's strategic nostalgia activation. These films aren't primarily aimed at kids, they're aimed at the adults who loved the originals. The casting choices, the press coverage, the marketing, it all emphasizes reconnecting with something you loved. And it works commercially even when it fails critically. The 2019 Lion King made $1.6 billion worldwide despite a fairly lukewarm critical reception. People weren't going because it was good. They were going because of what it meant to them. The third tool is the parks. And this is where the engineering gets really sophisticated. Disney's theme parks are not just entertainment. They are memory factories. And Disney's Imagineers, the people who design the parks, talk about this explicitly in interviews and internal documents that have become public over the years. The parks are designed around a concept called weenie, Walt Disney's term for a visual landmark that draws guests forward, like the castle at the end of Main Street, USA. Everything in the park is calibrated to create emotional peak experiences, particularly for first-time child visitors. Here's the business logic. When you bring a child to Disney World and they have a magical experience, you've created a memory that will anchor their relationship with Disney for the rest of their life. That child becomes a teenager who wants Disney merchandise. Then a young adult who streams Disney content. Then a parent who brings their own children to Disney World and pays upward of $5,000 to $10,000 for a family trip. Numbers that multiple travel analysis sites and Disney financial breakdowns have confirmed as typical for a 4-person family week-long visit, including hotels and tickets. Disney park admission prices have increased at a rate that vastly outpaces inflation. According to reporting from allears.net and confirmed against Disney's own pricing pages, a single-day ticket to Magic Kingdom now starts around $109 on the cheapest days and can exceed $189 on peak dates. When Disneyland opened in 1955, admission was $1. Adjusted for inflation, that's roughly $11 today. Yet Disney charges 10 to 17 times that. And people pay. Because it doesn't feel like a rational transaction. It feels like a pilgrimage. Disney parks generated $8.39 billion in revenue in just the first quarter of fiscal year 2024, according to Disney's Q1 2024 earnings report. That's one quarter. For context, that's more than many major sports leagues generate in an entire year. The parks also serve another function. They make the nostalgia physical. You're not just remembering something. You're inside it. Walking down Main Street, USA with your child, you're experiencing a kind of temporal collapse. You're simultaneously a parent in 2025 and a child in 1995. Disney designed that feeling. One thing that separates Disney's nostalgia strategy from any competitor is the scale at which they've acquired other beloved childhood properties. In 2006, Disney acquired Pixar for $7.4 billion. In 2009, they acquired Marvel for $4 billion. In 2012, they acquired Lucasfilm, and with it, Star Wars, for $4.05 billion. In 2019, they completed the acquisition of 21st Century Fox's entertainment assets for approximately $71 billion. Look at what they bought. Pixar means Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles, films that defined millennial and Gen Z childhoods. Marvel means a universe that grew from childhood comic books into the biggest film franchise in history. Star Wars is probably the most powerful nostalgia property ever created. It spans generations in a way almost nothing else does. Disney didn't buy these companies because it ran out of ideas. They bought pre-built emotional relationships with hundreds of millions of people. The Marvel strategy is particularly instructive. The MCU wasn't just a series of films, it was structured like a television series, with ongoing storylines, character arcs, and cliffhangers that required continued engagement to follow. If you wanted to understand Avengers Endgame, you needed to have seen roughly 20 prior films. That's a form of designed dependency. Not accidental. The interconnected narrative structure creates a commitment escalation. Each investment makes you more invested in the next. And when they brought back original cast members, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, they were activating nostalgia not just for childhoods, but for films people had seen in their 20s. Disney has become capable of manufacturing nostalgia for recent history. Disney's merchandise operation is enormous in ways that don't always get enough attention. Disney Consumer Products generates billions annually. According to a 2023 Brand Finance report, Disney was ranked among the top global licensing operations, with licensed product retail sales estimated in the tens of billions globally per year. The Disney brand generates more from licensing than almost any other entity on the planet. But the merchandise function isn't primarily about revenue. It's about extending the emotional relationship into physical objects. When a child sleeps under a Lion King bedspread, carries a Frozen backpack, and brushes their teeth with a Mickey Mouse toothbrush, Disney has embedded itself into the basic texture of daily life. These aren't luxury items. They're everyday objects. That normalization is intentional. And then those children grow up and start buying adult Disney merchandise, the enamel pins, the higher-end collectibles from Disney's own vault collections, the Spirit jerseys that cost $75 and are nearly ubiquitous at the parks. Disney merchandise didn't stop being aspirational when you grew up. It just changed form. The parks sell merchandise at an incredible premium precisely because buying it in the park feels different from buying it online. It's a souvenir of an emotional experience. You're not buying a $35 Mickey ear headband. You're buying a memory. Disney has commodified memory itself. Now, I want to be balanced here. Because what Disney does isn't uniformly sinister. Most of the films are genuinely great, and the emotional experiences are real. But there are legitimate criticisms that deserve to be named. The first is the financial exploitation of nostalgia. Disney has raised park prices to levels that make a magical childhood experience genuinely inaccessible to lower and middle-income families. According to a nerd wallet analysis and coverage in outlets like The Guardian and The New York Times, a family vacation to Disney World is now one of the most expensive domestic vacations possible for an American family. The nostalgia hook creates intense pressure on parents who want to give their children what they had, but the cost of that experience has become extreme. There's also a documented phenomenon of what park-goers and fan communities call Disney debt, people going into significant credit card debt to fund park trips because the emotional imperative overrides financial judgment. Threads on Reddit's r/personal finance and coverage in outlets like MarketWatch have documented families spending $10,000+ on Disney trips they couldn't afford, driven by nostalgia and the sense that the experience is emotionally non-negotiable. The second criticism is what happens when the nostalgia machine misfires. Disney's sequel and remake strategy has produced some genuine creative lows, films that were critically and sometimes commercially disappointing, where the IP was the only real draw. When you're relying on people's love for the original, rather than the quality of the new thing, you're making a withdrawal from the emotional bank account. Done too often, it erodes the relationship it was built on. The third issue is market consolidation. Disney's acquisitions have made it one of the most dominant forces in global entertainment. When one company controls Disney Animation, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, National Geographic, ABC, ESPN, FX, Hulu, and Disney+, that's an enormous concentration of cultural power. Critics, including media scholars and antitrust analysts quoted in outlets like The Atlantic, Vox, and The Wall Street Journal, have raised legitimate concerns about creative homogenization and the narrowing of the entertainment landscape when so much of it runs through one corporation's nostalgia optimization engine. So knowing all of this, why do we keep engaging? Because the nostalgia isn't fake. That's the key thing. Disney built its foundation on genuinely exceptional creative work. Fantasia, Snow White, Bambi, Cinderella, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, Toy Story. These are remarkable artistic achievements. The emotional memories that anchor the whole system were created by a real creative genius. The manipulation, if you want to call it that, is in how those genuine emotions have been turned into a self-perpetuating commercial system. You loved something real. Disney learned to trigger that love on demand. And because the original love was real, it continues to work. Behavioral economists would recognize what's happening here as an endowment effect on steroids. Here we overvalue things that are connected to our identity and our past. Disney has made itself part of millions of people's identities, and we instinctively protect and return to the things that feel like us. There's also the intergenerational dimension. Sharing Disney with your children isn't just about spending money, it's constructing family identity. It's giving your child access to a common cultural language. It's seeing something you love through new eyes. These are genuinely meaningful human experiences. Disney didn't manufacture the desire for intergenerational connection. They just positioned themselves as the vehicle for it. What Disney has built is extraordinary and worth understanding clearly, especially as they continue expanding into new markets, new technologies, and new generations of children who will grow up to be lifelong customers. The magic is real. The machine behind it is just a lot more deliberate than the magic would have you believe. If you found this interesting, there's a lot more to dig into on how entertainment companies engineer long-term consumer behavior. Drop a comment with which aspect of this you'd most want explored further.